Good afternoon, I'm Sean Yao, and this is One News Now. Comelec Commissioner Socorro Inteng is being eyed to serve as acting chairman of the poll body, pending new appointments. Bypassed Comelec Commissioner George Garcia told 1PH that the remaining commissioners have to elect an acting chair, and Inteng is considered as the most qualified based on seniority. Recall that Garcia and two other Comelec officials failed to secure the nod of the Commission on Appointments.
Base sa tradisyon ay kung sino ang pinaka-senior member ng commission election. Nung kami po'y dumating, ang ating pong acting chairman ay si Commissioner Socorro Inteng. And malamang-lamang po ay siya pa rin po yung magiging acting chairman.
Meanwhile, Garcia said he is open to accepting any position that President-elect Bongbong Marcos may offer him. Garcia was Marcos Jr.'s lawyer during his electoral protest against Vice President Leni Robredo back in 2016.
Hindi po ako hihindi sa kahit na anong offer na makatulong po sa ating bagong administrasyon, sa kahit na anong posisyon, sapagkat naintindihan ko, nalalaman ko na ngayon na pagka public service, kinakailangan magsasakripisyo ka.
Incoming Press Secretary Trixie Angeles is pushing to have vloggers accredited to cover Malacanang activities, prompting a bit of a pushback from the journalism community. Mobile journalist Pam Vasquez with the story.
The public might see vloggers covering Malacanang press briefing soon. Incoming Press Secretary Trixie Cruz Angeles plans to give online personalities and access to press cons.
We are pushing for the accreditation of vloggers to be invited to some of the briefings, especially those conducted by the President.
But for UP Journalism Associate Professor Danilo Arao, this could be a dangerous proposition.
It's dangerous in the sense that we have various forms of fake news, particularly historical denialism and red tagging. So the perpetrators couldn't be, provided too much privilege in terms of access to information. You don't do that at the expense of the journalists.
If this pushes through though, Arao says there should be a transparent selection process and clear guidelines.
We don't want a certain degree of favorable treatment for certain individuals just because they are supportive of the administration. And if you're critical, then you are deprived of action.
The National Union of Journalists of the Philippines has also called on upholding freedom of expression in a statement. They claim that media workers are being dominated by vloggers. NUJP also questioned whether the PCOO will take responsibility for the contents they're going to put out. The Malacanang Press Corps meanwhile said that they will wait until this accreditation is carried out by the next admin. Angeles, who was a lawyer vlogger prior to her nomination, has earlier said that she plans to hold press briefings once to twice a week. Would she allow journalists to cover these events?
I think we'll have to take a look at the existing policy first and make a decision later on as to how appropriate they are for the current times.
Mobile journalist Pamela Vasquez, We Are One News.
Another thing getting pushed back is PhilHealth's move to start collecting higher premiums this month. Shaila Francisco with the report.
Workers who are PhilHealth members can expect a lower take-home pay this month. This as the state insurer will implement the 4% hike in contribution this year, up from the previous 3%. This means that PhilHealth will now collect 400 pesos to 3,200 pesos for the monthly premium depending on the basic salary. What's more burdensome is that the hike is retroactive, so members will have to pay the additional 1% for the months of January to May. However, they can pay off the amount until December 2022. Among those who will be affected is security guard Ezekiel. He said that he won't be able to enjoy the hike in minimum wage because of this.
Dinagdagan nga po ng 33 ang minimum natin. Dinagdagan naman po yung singil ng PhilHealth. Eh di parang sa PhilHealth lang napunta, sumobra pa. Malaking bagay po kasi yan eh. Pwede ka nang mag-ulam ng manok eh. Kung mababawasan pa yung sahod namin, eh di baka mag-itlog na lang po kami.
Other Others like Jerome, who is planning to be a self-paying member, is having second thoughts on contributing part of his salary to PhilHealth.
Mas kailangan po namin cash talaga. Mas kailangan namin ng pera pagdating sa daily namin. Hindi po namin ramdam, ma'am, kasi medyo naman po yung namin. Hindi namin talaga nagagamit.
Even employers are complaining about the PhilHealth contribution hike.
Any additional expense now for the company is very material, especially that we are trying to have people open up and expand so that employment can be generated again.
PhilHealth explains that it is their duty to collect these contributions under the Universal Healthcare Law. Despite this, they assure that services will improve amid the higher contribution. The 205 billion peso expected collection will be used for programs such as COVID-19 benefits, outpatient care for malnutrition and mental health, among others.
Investment po natin ito para sa ating kalusugan. Sapagkat kung hindi naman tayo malusog o kung tayo nagkasakit at naubos yung atin pong savings, ay napakalaki din ang epekto ito sa atin, sa ating pamilya.
The principal sponsor of the Universal Healthcare Law, Senator-elect J.V. Ejercito, is calling for the suspension of the hike. He argues that the health department should request supplemental funding to cover the amount that should be collected. However, PhilHealth said that they can only suspend the hike through a law. The Makabayan Bloc, for its part, says it will refile the resolution to defer PhilHealth Premium Hike. They're also calling on the new administration to make it a priority. Shaila Francisco, VR One News.
One News Now will be back with more stories after this quick break. Keep it here. Still watching One News Now. I'm Sean Yao. Podcasts are becoming a hit online with nearly 3 million podcasts already up and counting. But can the industry cope with the growth? Bloomberg's Alex Webb answers that question in this video from Bloomberg.
The US podcast industry made $1.5 billion from advertising last year. That makes it sound like a bonanza, but the reality is a lot more complicated. The lockdowns were good for the podcast industry. In 2019, 275 million people listened to a podcast at least once a month. Last year, that had increased to 384 million, and this year it's going to hit 424 million. The problem is that the number of podcasts increased more quickly. Pre-pandemic, Spotify hosted 450,000 1,000 podcasts. Now it's about 2.9 million. In other words, there was a 540% increase in the number of podcasts, but just a 40% increase in the size of the audience. Why is that? Well, partly it's to do with Spotify's business model. In music streaming, it has to give about 75% of revenue straight to the record labels. It's only fair. It's the labels and their musicians who actually produce the music. But it also explains why Spotify has never posted a profit on a net basis since it became a public company. Spotify's solution has been to pivot more towards podcasts. On the whole, they have a fixed cost that doesn't increase in lockstep with the number of listeners. That's why it's hiring big names like Joe Rogan, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. The idea is that it moves more towards a model similar to Netflix's. And of course in podcasts you can make money twice, from the subscription fee and advertising. But if it's a good deal for Spotify, is it also a good deal for those millions of podcasts? Well, the market is tough. Yes, advertising revenue is increasing, but not as quickly as the number of new podcasts. Back in 2019, US podcast advertising revenue hit $708 million, equivalent to about $1.5 million per podcast. Now that's more than doubled to $1.5 billion, but it averages out to just $500,000 per podcast. And of course, in reality, very few people are making anything near that sort of money. Most of the value is concentrated towards the top of the pyramid. The long tail of small podcasts with small audiences barely make any income at all. That's put a real premium on discoverability, or how easy it is to find your show. And it's also made Apple and Spotify into gatekeepers. There's a bit of a conflict of interest there, of course, because Apple and Spotify both produce their own content too. They have both the opportunity and the incentive to give their own shows preferential treatment. Here's Matt Deegan, the creative director of Folder Media, which produces some podcasts.
Will the curatorial places on Spotify become more about Spotify originals than they do about third-party content? Now, I don't think it'll ever go 100%, but already probably 20% of curatorial is to Spotify, and Spotify don't produce nearly anything like 20% of the big podcasts out there.
There's also little stopping them from following the playbook pioneered by social media companies. About a decade ago, brands and public figures alike were encouraged to build public profiles with the promise they'd be able to reach huge audiences. But over time, the algorithm was tweaked, meaning that you might have 1 million followers, but you'd only perhaps reach 1% of them if you didn't pay for more prominent placement. That's also another risk for podcasters, that it starts to become pay to play. Spotify's already doing this in the music space. Artists can pay to promote their new releases. In turn, that's why audio giants like the BBC and Luminary are building their own apps. They don't want to be beholden to the whims of the gatekeepers. There's a real contest for your ears, and they're turning up the volume.
Here's a quick look at today's other top stories. Enrique Razon's Prime Infra Holdings has confirmed that it will acquire a controlling stake in Dennis Uй's Malampaya project. The gas-to-power project is seen for decommissioning between 2027 and 2029 after a projected decline in energy output by 2024. In a statement, Prime Infra said that its entry is critical for the continued operation and expansion of the project. Formerly executives Mohit Dargani and Lincoln Ong have been released after more than 6 months of detention at the Pasay City Jail. Senate President Tito Soto signed the release order as the Senate adjourned for its last session day in the 18th Congress. And actor Johnny Depp has won over $10 million in damages, achieving a near-total victory in a defamation suit against ex-wife Amber Heard. Depp argued that Heard defamed him when she called herself a public figure representing domestic abuse in a newspaper opinion piece. Heard countersued and won $2 million in damages. For more updates, visit News 5, The Philippine Star, and Business World online. Visit our website, onenews.ph, for more in-depth analysis. You can also catch One News on Signal Play app. Register for a free account at www.signalplay.com and stream One News live anytime, anywhere. Masks on, wash hands, and stay safe, Philippines. I am Sean Yao. We are One News.